It was another wild Saturday in college football with major implications to the college football playoff picture, as we can see right here. Beanie Wells, Kevin Carter, Brent Stover here to break it down for the next 8 minutes. I'll tell you what, not a whole lot changed. Obviously, Indiana, Texas Tech, and Ole Miss were all off. Two major losses came at the bottom of the 16 here. Among the next four in with USC and Georgia Tech both falling. Obviously, Georgia Tech fell to Pitt, USC falling to Oregon. Other than that, Kevin, it was kind of the status quo in terms of the CFP playoff picture.
It was sort of the status quo. The committee's been telling us the same thing over every week. By their initial rankings, there's 5 SEC teams. There's 3 Big Ten teams, and there's 3 other teams that are going to get in. They keep showing you this example, and we keep seeing teams like Vanderbilt on the for instance, on the outside. What do they need to do to get in? One of these teams has to lose. This is a crazy game of musical chairs, but the chairs are set. They're telling you it's going to be 5 SEC teams. So if you're not one of those top 5 SEC teams that doesn't play in a conference champion, or maybe trying to get an at-large bid, you're not making your way in if you can't eclipse one of those teams. And right now, they're saying they respect the body of work of Alabama, of Oklahoma, of Ole Miss, these teams more than the body of work of Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I was so hoping that this situation got a little more murky in terms of the teams from the Big Ten and there being an opportunity for us to get a 4th team in the Big Ten up on this board. But Oregon went out and took care of business decisively versus USC. So that obviously cancels them out. But Vanderbilt, the team you're mentioning, I'm really intrigued by them because, in my opinion, they are one of those 2-loss teams that I can legit see making a run in the college football playoff. They're a team that's starting to look good late. Diego Pavia has been sensational for this football team. I think if they get in this dance, they can make a lot of noise.
And Beanie, to your point, man, they got Tennessee next week, okay? If they beat Tennessee, they'll be a 10-2 team in the SEC with an excellent resume. And like I said, there may not be enough room at the table, but we don't know what's going to happen with Alabama in the Iron Bowl. We don't know what's going to happen with Texas and Texas A&M when they play in Rivalry Weekend. So there are things that could happen and could take place for Vanderbilt to get in. But right now, the model is just so set in terms of the chairs that are going to be laid out.
Okay, Kevin, what does Georgia Tech's huge loss to Pitt mean to their playoff chances and really the ACC as a whole? Because Miami with the 11th seed kind of feels like a placeholder for the moment because they are not probably going to be playing for an ACC title.
I'm glad you used that terminology, placeholder, because it's just a placeholder for whoever wins the ACC. That's all it is. There's one spot for the ACC, and right now they're thinking that they're putting Miami in it because Georgia Tech lost. Yep. Georgia Tech was there last week, and these 2 teams were switched. So going down the stretch, there's only going to be one team. Georgia Tech kind of disappointed in their effort today versus Pitt. Narduzzi said, hey, we're going all in on an ACC championship, given our chances in our conference, instead of trying to go out and beat Notre Dame. So this week, next thing you know, they go all in versus Georgia Tech. And we've been wondering, man, one of these games, are they going to come back and bite Georgia Tech in the butt? Are they going to, the way they're playing, the way they're barely winning these games, they're just kind of skating by? What's going to happen today? They got bit in the butt by a really good Pitt team that sees their opportunity in the ACC.
Yeah, I still think so much could go on in the ACC. Next week, we got a Pitt versus Miami game that could be a huge indicator in the swing for this conference and deciding, okay, can this team get 1 or 2 into this college football playoff? I still think there's a way. I think a lot of people in that committee still value Miami a whole lot. So them being right there, just on the outside looking in, I think they could potentially climb up in this thing, and this ACC conference could get real interesting down the stretch.
I want to revisit the conversation, Kevin, that we have been having since the rankings came out this past Tuesday, and that would be the fact that to start the season, Miami beat Notre Dame. In fact, Notre Dame lost A&M as well. We all know Notre Dame has been red hot since with 9 straight victories. You guys love the way Notre Dame is playing, but Miami has looked good the last few weeks as well. They both have 2 losses, and I would just pitch to you, Beanie, that head-to-head, Miami beat Notre Dame. But if it comes down to Notre Dame or Miami, you're going with the Irish.
100%. I'm going with what I see on film right now, not what I saw 8 weeks ago, 9 weeks ago. That's why I think that adage is still out there. It's better to lose early than lose late. And I think the committee is valuing that. And when we watch Miami and Notre Dame play, I think Notre Dame is far and beyond better in every phase of the game than Miami. And then you go look at Miami's losses. They had bad losses. It would be a difference if they was losing to some of the top teams in the country like Notre Dame did. They lost to a top Miami team, a top Texas A&M team. It hasn't been the case for Miami.
But you can't count the losses if one of them was – I get the A&M loss. Okay, that was a better loss than obviously each of the losses that Miami has suffered.
Teams are different in November than they were in September and August.
But the other good loss that Notre Dame took was to Miami, the team we're comparing him to, Kevin.
Well, that's
Why am I getting so intense towards my good friend Beanie? He's the nicest guy on earth.
Look, I'll say this again. The committee tells you what their opinion of every team is in the country by how they rank these teams and how they have significant representation and how many teams are grouped together and where they are in the top 25, particularly in the top 12. They're telling you what they think of these teams. The committee's telling you they value Notre Dame more so than Miami. The answer is in your question. You actually, it was loaded in your question.
Okay.
You said the last couple of weeks, Miami's been playing impressively. Yeah, but a couple of weeks ago, we were all kind of concerned about Miami and Cristobal doing what Miami and Cristobal teams have typically done when they've been knocking on the door, okay? And that's find a way to mess it up. And they almost did, losing to unranked Louisville, losing to SMU. Dude, this is real, okay? So your track record, what you done caused you to be where you're at. The body of work, they're looking at everything you've done, your evolution of your team. And I'm telling you, the committee values, like we do, Notre Dame more so than Miami because Miami's been inconsistent. And Beanie, you said this earlier, Carson Beck, in the biggest games they have, he hasn't shown up.
I would say this. We've got some huge games, clearly, to close out the regular season coming out next week. As you look at it, Beanie, what's the number one game? Would it be, as it pertains to the playoff? I mean, you could talk about Michigan, Ohio State. You could obviously talk about A&M against Texas. You could talk Georgia, Georgia Tech. You could talk the Iron Bowl, Auburn trying to play spoiler against Alabama. What direction do you go here in the final week?
I'm going to go A&M versus Texas. That's a very intriguing game because to me, if Texas goes out and wins that game, now this thing really gets murky and the waters are really muddy at this point in time because the committee could go and say, you know what? Let's look at Texas's resume. They will indeed have one of the best or hardest schedules in college football that they have to have gone through. Yeah, they lost a few games to some of the top teams in the country, but nonetheless, if they beat the number 3 team, Texas A&M, I think you would indeed have to consider those guys, those Longhorns, as a 3-loss team getting this college football playoff.
I'm with you, especially in the SEC. I think some of those matchups are really going to be pivotal because the SEC seems to have the most of these imaginary musical chairs slots designated for that conference, right? So if we're looking at it that way, then I'm looking at Alabama too, because you're looking at every team that's somewhat susceptible, that's not in that top 3 team range. They could lose to Auburn next week, okay? This is a team that, from a matchup standpoint, has had trouble with certain people this season. Alabama is playing with fire a little bit because of their inability to run the ball, which came back to bite them against Oklahoma. So when you're looking at strength of body of work, this Alabama team could be in jeopardy. That matchup, Oklahoma to finish the season. I mean, the reason I like college football the way it is right now is because every game, every team up there has got a pivotal matchup to end the season and in order for them to get there. Ohio State, your guys got a huge one next week. Texas A&M's playing Texas. I mean, Georgia. Everywhere you look, there's great matchups.
No matter what we see from Georgia Tech, they can still take Georgia to the wire.
It's an award show. They're bringing the music up. I had 3 more things I wanted to
We can do this all day.
We can do it all day and all night. Can't wait to see the new rankings on Tuesday.